so.
They say fear is the mind killer. Yet also, everywhere you turn, especially around this time of the year, we can watch as the emotion of fear is widely celebrated. Everywhere you look hangs images to conjure thoughts of a shivering, spooky atmosphere. As the years have progressed, the icons of October have been diluted to a safer, less scary standard. I find it difficult to criticize this comfy change, as it has allowed a more comfortable outreach in the audience. Horror is a genre celebrated by all, in every place, in every culture, in every age. That which frightens us compels us so. Looking back, it becomes clear to me that even at our most cowardly, so many fellow humans contain that little part of us that wants to see something scary. There is an abundance of stories of children shaken to their core by something that still regularly ask to experience that fear once more. A child cozies up in bed, pulling the covers close. A parent enters the room. The child asks to hear that story again, the one that causes them to pull the covers even closer. This request for terror extends beyond the terms of a harmless jump scare. Sometimes it's a desire for a genuine disturbance. Kids are so regularly compelled to request that which frightens them, and thus, creators oblige. Throughout the existence of pop culture, scary children's media has existed. Betty Boop's ghostly encounters, horror-themed Mickey escapades, even entire shows dedicated to the aesthetics of the macabre. Video games veered in this direction with titles like Majora's Mask, Luigi's Mansion, Five Nights at Freddy's, Hello Neighbor, and countless more. Wherever there is media to supplement the lesser developed mind, there is a scare or two waiting around the corner. The most interesting part, however, is how often it seems that the adults of this world seem so eager to dismiss the concepts found within, to dispose of an experience merely because it was made with a younger audience in mind. These naive individuals who dare imply that it's expected for a child to want to step into the adult world of media, but that the reverse is foolish, frowned upon, unnecessary. If you expect me to agree with them, then you must not know where you are. I'm the hairiest hare, and this is a special spooky Hares Haunting Hour edition of Ranting Rabbit, a show where I pop open my skull and dissect the many brain wrinkles within. Tonight, I cast my glowing gaze upon the wonderment of fright that so many of us find at an early age, the terrifying contradiction that seems to enrapture many. Why is it that we are so often drawn to the dark at a young age? Why is it that kids feel compelled to seek out that which frightens them? And beyond that, why do I, as an adult, still feel the pull towards this rather rudimentary realm of fear? Here in my manor, I stare deep into my mirror of mysteries and muse on one thought in particular. Why is it that children's horror is so compelling? Little flesh creatures gather around a campfire. They engage in the time-honored tradition of telling scary stories, nearly guaranteed to give them nightmares or keep them lying awake, unable to sleep. To what end, though? When it comes to the world of scares, every child is going to treat and respond to different stimuli in ways not particularly predictable. One kid may laugh at the depictions of Nightmare on Elm Street's Freddy. Another may shudder and cry. Some kids think that spiders are terrifying. Others are content with keeping them as pets. We are all very different at our core, and this arguably starts at a rather young age. Discovering this cause and effect stimulus is often the most exciting part of being a child. New experiences bring forth new emotions, and when you're young and still exploring what these new emotions mean to you, this genuinely means that everything interests you. Therefore, when a child trepidatiously sticks their nose into a scary experience and expectedly walks away with a bit of trauma, it's just them forming who they are, what it is they fear, and what it is they're cool with. Sometimes, though, that thrill of a fright doesn't lead to a disheartening experience, but one of the equivalents to a roller coaster. This jolt of adrenaline and excitement that still lingers with you well after it's over. That lingering thought compels you to, perhaps, try it again. The added layer that causes so many children to linger on the dreadful experiences, however, is one that no adult could fully comprehend. The feeling that what you are viewing is something you shouldn't be. Horror is so often frowned upon by parents, and in the world of being a kid, no matter how obedient and well-behaved you are, the rebellious spirit inside of you can't help but find your curiosity lingering over that which the adults insist you aren't ready for. So when the parents say no to the scary things, fully aware of the nightmares awaiting, the young mind can't help but feel like anything, even horror adjacent, is near the edge of what is not allowed. Witnessing the nightmarish pages found within something like Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, or the haunting paragraphs of a Goosebumps novel was one thing, but to find it at a scholastic book fair was to fill you with this feeling like you were obtaining something you should not be allowed to have. The taboo nature of children's horror only amplifies the desire to obtain it. Curiosity, rebellion, and thrill are the core foundations of children's horror, and what they result in is something so delightful. When it comes to the discussion of horror for children, we obviously can't ignore some of the big names still remaining relevant as super successful franchises. The biggest of all possibly being Five Nights at Freddy's. But rather than the what, let's focus on the why. Why is FNAF such a perfectly made storm for fans young and old? Freddy's brings a devilish twist, a nightmarish spin on a rather dated concept. The animatronic puppets of restaurants like Chuck E. Cheese and Showbiz Pizza Place. If you're watching this video, chances are you're probably young enough to be shocked by just how popular the animatronic band restaurant boom was back in the day. Yet, that also means that you're just young enough to find the images of its greatest stars to be a little haunting. The uncanny uncomfortableness of these creatures sparks just enough fear within most of us. Just enough fear to be honed in on. Five Nights focuses on that feeling and crafts a haunting story and image around these animatronics simply by asking the question of, what if the animatronics were living entities in the dead of night? It's simple, cartoonish, childish, yet that doesn't make it any less effective. It's a concept that has the potential to reach beyond itself due to how easy the frightful image of living animatronics translates to most human minds. Television shows like Courage the Cowardly Dog, Invader Zim, Goosebumps, and countless others contain within them some occasionally disturbing imagery. So many small snippets of these shows rest within the minds of their audience, lingering there well into their adulthood. The ghostly wail of "Return the slime" echoes within my mind at night. Some days I randomly recall Zim's extremely grim organ harvesting episode. Occasionally, I remember the uncomfortable undertones of a Goosebumps episode that ends in tragedy rather than hope. It's traumatizing, yet also, I feel such elation when I bring these examples up. This bizarre shared trauma between members of my generation, yet it's still just as thrilling when you return to these episodes. One grand advantage that children's horror contains is the ability to return to it and discover that it doesn't affect you the same way, leaving you baffled as to how something so simple would have kept you up at night. Just as well, you might discover complete justification for it. You can still see it through the eyes of your younger self and shudder alongside them. Whether a child or an adult, though, there is something to really appreciate about how often some of the scariest parts of children's content is not necessarily the parts intended to derive fear. Sometimes, it's just an uncanny depiction of a character, an off-putting setting. It's so unexpected what can set our younger selves off. So when it's time for creators to make an effort and birth horrific imagery, what you may often find is a twist on the concept. These twists usually serve to make the monstrous a little more mundane. This creates this somewhat comforting feeling, allowing children to both feel that initial fear and then eventually overcome it. One of the standout reasons why a younger member of society would partake in something scary is because on the other side of unnerving is bravery, and a lot of kids love being brave. Today, while games like Freddy's continue to milk the children's horror market, there are also plenty of creepy projects that lean not into the audience of children, but instead us, the adults, with a memory of nostalgia still twinkling in our eyes. Projects like Welcome Home, a site dedicated to the conservation of a Sesame Street-like puppet show that never existed, containing within it some horrifically sinister undertones when digging deep enough. Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared also honed in on this puppet show aesthetic, leaning heavily into the message of the day tropes these particular shows send to kids and putting a dark twist on it. Though it spun off into a series of many well-crafted shorts and even got its own television show, just looking at the contents of the first entry serves as this immensely deep well of concepts to explore, with underlying themes, horrific subliminal imagery, and an absolutely nightmarish twist on the beloved puppet show trope. Don't Hug Me cuts straight to the heart of its viewers. Even if we all know what we're watching is not a children-friendly show, and it definitely never existed as such, there's likely still a part of you that thinks, but what if this was a kid's show? What if I was still a child seeing this? In the hands of skilled storytellers, creepypasta has encountered an evolution with games like like Petscop and Catastrophe Crow. Games that do not exist to the public yet are created and documented online as if they are very much real and very much hiding something deeper and far more uncomfortable than their child-friendly appearance would otherwise imply. There are examples all over the internet. We are obsessed with it. There's just something we love about the idea that children's horror isn't necessarily overt, but instead subtle. All it requires is a coat of child-friendly paint, poorly disguising the nightmare within. What once was a bunch of string theories on characters being quote-unquote dead the whole time, or posts exposing some dark secret found within a kids show, now finds itself in the form of real, well-crafted projects. And so what is it? Why are we so drawn to this force? Personally, I theorize that maybe it's still that child inside of us that gets a sense of curiosity, rebellion, and thrill each time we encounter one of these works of horror. We look at it with both current eyes, diving into the mystery and subtext, while also looking at it with the lingering thought of what it would be like to obtain these stories as a child and simply engage with them blissfully unaware. Not to make this video all about Five Nights at Freddy's, but I think that this theory of mine explains what made the franchise such a juggernaut of the children's horror scene. On the surface, it is overtly scary. It is a twisted image of a concept that used to give joy. Children can flock to it, engage with it, and enjoy it on a level of comfortability. This is only enhanced by our digital world allowing them to engage with it through the eyes of a Let's Player or a streamer, without having to get their own hands dirty. Through this, the marketable plushies, the lengthy roster of favorite characters, and now a theatrical film, the children have their way of engaging with that slice of horror that fulfills every little scary itch. Meanwhile, FNAF contains within it some more subtle horrors, the very real concept of child murders, loss, and grief. Under the hood, the lore of Five Nights could potentially draw you in no matter the age due to its underlying nature as a narrative that, quite frankly, would seem like a lot to put on a kid. This deep, diveable dumpster of information isn't found directly on the surface of the game. It is something that takes genuine attention and sleuthing to find. While I am ignoring a lot of my gripes with the way that story is handled, I still think this series is exactly something that can appeal to a much wider audience due to how it scratches both the itches of the older and the younger by being both scary and compelling all at once. To me, it is ridiculous to discount the genuine pull that children's horror tends to have on us of the older generation. It is even more ridiculous to me should we deny ourselves this pull. Children's horror doesn't necessarily mean that it is only surface level. It doesn't mean that it is just a shallow kiddie pool version of something scary. It simply means that it is accessible. Yet even if it was somewhat shallow, is that so wrong to still want to participate in it? In my eyes, just because you grew old doesn't mean you aren't able to engage with something made for a younger audience. To me, that age and experience just makes it possible for you to observe it with a different outlook. For that matter, I don't personally think that children's storytelling, horror or not, should remain surface level. Theming, emotional depth, and compelling narratives isn't something that should remain exclusive to adults. But even if something made to be children's horror doesn't contain that depth, I don't think that you're expected to move on from and not engage with it. Horror, no matter how subtle, overt, excellent, or poor, is just a genre so many of us enjoy overall. With this in mind, I think children's horror always has this compelling draw. Whether it's just because you want to recall your personal nightmares or because it genuinely interests you, looking down these dark avenues is quite simply fun. And that's probably what keeps children's horror so compelling. No matter the age, no matter the culture, no matter the place, horror speaks to us. And for as long as it is speaking, I encourage you to listen. With that, I hear the call of the night.
You've been chosen.
You must leave me to my dark and mysterious ways.
So other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, how did you enjoy the show?
Well, anyway,
Bro, I'm not laughing, but catch you in the shadows. Be excellent to each other.